This is true stories on victims who have lost their homes. Spousal rights were lost. That means as a spouse you lost the matrimonial home. And title theft and mortgage fraud due to secret filing is legal in Canada, and almost every province but Saskatchewan has protection. And every other province you're in jeopardy. Thousands every year. And why? As a direct result of secret filing. And yet the media in Canada has never exposed the real truth that behind the thousands of fraud and homes being robbed every year, it's a direct result of secret filing, a criminal law that's banned in every other country but Canada. Now, this picture is a home that I sold to rescue my mother from abject poverty. I didn't know, and that story is on a website, and I've sent it out to every member of Parliament coast to coast, federal and provincial, and I can't find one to care. But in the law, it's possible for a criminal to steal your home and steal your property and put a mortgage illegally in your home, and you don't even have the right to be notified. Statistics have proven that Canada has the highest level of mortgage fraud and real estate theft, and yet not one member of Parliament is putting forward a bill to ban secret filing and to give and our Prime Minister Trudeau doesn't care. I've sent to his staff many times. I've sent to attorney generals. I've sent to everybody you can think of, and I've sent to every media, and yet nothing is being done. And I'm only one person. So I'm putting out these stories for historical purposes, because right now there's nothing in the media. But secret filing is banned in United States and England and Europe for over almost 100 years. My website is www.rights4realestate.com. Millions of homes and properties in Ontario and all across Canada. In other words, every home is in jeopardy of being a victim, and you don't even know it. You have more chance of becoming a victim of mortgage fraud than house fire. And yet most victims have no title insurance protection for mortgage fraud. And they don't even know about it. Real estate agents, lawyers, brokers, they don't know about it. And your regular insurance company for a house fire, they're not allowed to do it. You have to get it only through a lawyer. And yet a lawyer doesn't tell you that when you buy a home. But you can get it, even if you've had a home for 40 and 50 years, you can get it. And that's on my website. But no one has yet done a thing to stop secret filing, which is the cause of all this fraud and seniors losing their homes legally in Ontario and Canada. The most vulnerable victims are seniors, women, and young people who are not as well educated and are extremely vulnerable, and they don't realize what the law is. But the truth is that I'm not even sure if that's an accurate statement, because you could be of any age and become a victim. Because the fact is that there can be any change on title to your property without you even having the right to be notified. That's illegal in Saskatchewan, but in every other province, you can have a change on title, and you have no law demanding that any change on title that you get a written notification before the change has taken place, so that you have at least an opportunity to fight it. Thousands are victims every year in Canada, and you'll never even hear them because the media's silence on the subject is absolutely deafening, and our corrupt court system keeps the victims from being heard. Only in Canada can anyone put a mortgage on your home without your knowledge, file it in title in secret. Yes, in secret. And you're liable even though it's fraud. And the police won't even investigate, because in most cases it was done legally through a lawyer. So they say that you have to go to civil court, which means you've got to spend $50,000 to $100,000 in court to try and get your property back. Well, guess what? You're not going to get it back. I've been fighting for 4 years, and the property's gone, and the money's squandered and long gone, and the criminals are long gone, and you don't stand a hope in hell. And the suffering can't even Never mind the financial and devastation and ruin to the victims, but the emotional and mental and physical strain and stress and suffering that they go through. And the other thing that people don't even consider, I mean, our politicians and our media is not even considering, do you not realize that when people like me and my mother, who are worth over $1 million, wind up in abject poverty, that we wind up in subsidized housing, they wind up in subsidized housing, it costs the taxpayers, it costs the insurance, and yet nobody cares. But only in Canada is it legal. So you know, people, you get the government you deserve. When you vote, if you're voting for somebody who doesn't care about these laws, well, then you're voting for a lawless country, and that's what we are. We are completely corrupt, because it is banned in every other country, and this is only made in Canada. That's right, made in Canada. It's so unfair. Now I'm going to talk about, on April 2018, it was reported that a couple from India, and I have that on my website, and her husband lost their Brampton home to mortgage fraud and title theft. Now Samantha Brooks, oh, that woman, I could just scream every time I think of her. She's a CEO with Mortgages of Canada, and she claimed this is common in Canada, and that it's easy for anyone to get title insurance. Well, she's full of baloney, because I went through hell, months and months, with my new lawyer, Mr. Longstreet, and I couldn't get any company to give me any information, and it cost me $800 to get that information, and I put that on my website, and I put that out to people. But almost every home in Canada does not have title insurance. Would you even consider not having fire insurance? Well, guess what? It'll cost you about $500. If you have a home worth $500,000, it only costs you $1,000, and it'll protect you for the life of your ownership of the property. But it won't protect you from the other forms of theft. Okay, there's many other ways, because of secret filing, that your property can be stolen. My mother and I were a victim of fraud, but it was not mortgage fraud. It was because we did not know, that we didn't have the right to know about the fact that my father had severed the joint tenancy. So here we were renovating properties that we didn't even own. Now, CTV News Online recently charged 4 men in a sophisticated $17 million mortgage fraud investigation that began in 2013. It was called the Project Bridle Path, which is a multi-million-dollar mansion district of Toronto, Ontario. The CTV article did not say if the victims lost their homes too. I don't think so, because of their wealth, I'm sure their insurance would cover it. Only the poor get the kind of Canadian injustice that my mother and I and thousands of others get. What they did not discuss was this was a direct result that secret filing is legal and is banned in every other country. And they went on to say that title insurance would have protected them. Well, yeah, that's true. But how can you get title insurance if your lawyer... I asked my lawyer, I said, how often do you do title insurance? He said, most of my clients haven't asked about it. I said, how can they ask about something that they don't even know exists? So you see, that's the situation. Catch-22. You don't know it exists, so you don't get it, and your lawyer doesn't tell you about it. And your real estate agents don't even know about it. And your brokers don't know about it. There are hundreds of thousands of other cases that you'll never hear about, and it's been going on for hundreds of years. Mortgage fraud is only one way that secret filing allows for property theft, fraud, and estate embezzlement. There are many other ways you'll never hear about, such as my mother and myself, and now a few victims of their stories shared with me. I had to keep their names anonymous because for personal reasons, they don't want their stories told. They're embarrassed, typical victim behavior. But banning secret filing and getting Canadian laws into the 20th century with democratic rules of law before any name or changes on title are allowed to be registered or put on title on real estate property. All registered owners should first be notified in writing and consent obtained in writing. That's Saskatchewan law. And no severance of joint tenancy on the matrimonial home is allowed in Saskatchewan without consent, unless it's a divorce or separation, in which case you go to court. You go to court in a divorce anyway. How would you like to have a divorce made in secret, and you don't even know that you're divorced? Well, that's substantially the injustice of the law of secret filing in Canada. Anyway, only Saskatchewan law will protect you. It's called the Homestead Act of 1989, and a copy of that is on my website. Now, Canadian properties are a very bad investment because no matter how hard you work or how long you own your home and properties, there is absolutely no protection for your property rights, spousal rights, in any province in Canada except for Saskatchewan. Secret filing is a law designed by the Romans 2,000 years ago by a dictator who was a thief for the sole purpose of stealing your properties, committing fraud, and estate embezzlement. And yes, estate embezzlement is what we were the victim of. And that was all done in secret. And the law allowed it, and that's why the police won't file a charge. Whereas in Saskatchewan, because it is illegal and secret filing is banned, the police would have had to charge my brother for stealing our properties and the fraud that he committed. But no, I have to go to civil court. So $100,000 later, $300,000 lost, now I'm homeless. Yeah, that's only one person. I'm not the only one who is made homeless by this garbage. This is not a democracy, people. Secret filing is designed by criminals for criminals. Okay? And it has to be banned. Why do your members of parliament think it's okay? I don't know. Why is media not publishing the truth? I've sent it to Marketplace. I've sent it to CBC, CTV, you name it. I've sent it to everybody. Not one cares. So you, the people, you get the government you deserve because you're all sitting back with, I can't break the wall of indifference. God knows I've tried. Because our government system is not a true democracy. It is so corrupt, making so much money at your expense. Despite my real estate careers, 23 years working in advertising, marketing, corporation investments. I'm going to show you just a little, I don't know where it is. Oh, here it is. Yeah, okay. I was very well off. I didn't need to wind up in abject poverty. Oh, I can't find it. Well, it doesn't matter. It's on my website, Fooey. But in 1981, I made national leaders, and I was in real estate, and I was very well off, and I lost everything because of the system in Canada. You can lose it also through the fact that we don't have protection from Health Canada in if you have allergies. But there's so many ways that you can lose your home in this country, and it's all done legally. Now, I had no idea, despite my years of advertising, marketing, corporations, and investments, and I was a real estate agent, I had no idea that anybody could steal your property in secret, and that our laws make property theft, real estate theft, title theft, and fraud, and embezzlement of state funds all are legal because of secret filing. Why would I think that's okay? Listen, it's also far-fetched. People don't even believe me. I keep trying to tell them, but nobody believes me. But the stories are all true. Only the names are not revealed at their personal request. Please, I'm urging people, contact your members of parliament. Help me get a democracy for Canada. Now, this is a picture of my mother shortly before she died. Yes, she did die from heart failure, but she died of a broken heart because she was robbed of everything. She had used up her life savings on renovating properties that she didn't even own. And she wound up in abject poverty, from which I had to rescue her. In the end, I wound up homeless myself. And that's a very long, separate story, which I have put on my website. Now, secret filing was the main reason for everything that happened to us, because it snowballs. It starts with one thing, severance of the joint tenancy on the matrimonial home in secret. Then my brother, as an executor, took title to the properties in the home in secret. And then he didn't pay the taxes, all in secret. And the tax department didn't have to tell us that he'd changed the address to his home. And we didn't even have the right to know. And we didn't, also in secret, he was filing fraudulent income tax, which I reported, and the government doesn't care about, and that was all done in secret. I had to pay $2,000 to an accountant just to get a copy of the income tax. even though I was my mother's executor and I had power of attorney. So this is what secret filing does. It destroys your life completely. I know a lot of people have committed suicide because of this. And quite frankly, I came awfully close. But not because of what my brother did, but because I was ripped off and lied to by Trent Faldine, my lawyer, of $60,000, who lied to me and promised to help me get media, and he promised to help me get the story and file an affidavit against the government of Ontario to get the secret filing banned under Section 7 of the Charter of Rights. Because if you lose half your home and your properties in secret, you also lose $500,000 in secret. That affects your financial future. And that's supposed to be against the law, but, you know, not in Canada, not with secret filing. So, I mean, you know, it's just, what's it going to take? How would you like to live with a violent, abusive spouse 61 years and 18 years after his death, discover you don't even own the matrimonial home you've lived in for 60 years? Yes, that's what happened to my mother, Trahan-upchan, at the age of 95. But we were now facing a public auction and being evicted from our home because my brother didn't pay the taxes. And it was all done in secret. We didn't even have the right to know that the taxes weren't being paid, and we were the registered owners. So that's the kind of laws we have in Canada. You got to be crazy to invest in Canada. If I'd known better, I would have gone to Saskatchewan or stayed in New York. But of course, hindsight's 2020. So you do not even have the most basic of human rights, the right to be notified in writing before any change. And this led to an 18-year nightmare of being held hostage by my brother, and $1 million stolen in fraud and embezzlement and theft of property rights, and it was all made legal. So the police wouldn't lift a finger to help me, and not because I don't have a good relationship with the police, because actually I've helped them more than they'll ever help me. I showed them how, I gave them information on how to change their wills so no executor can do that. You can add a clause in protection, and I've got that on my website. And I also sent them the information to get title insurance, which they didn't know about. But they refused to lay any charges against my brother. And they won't. And my brother's not the only one. He's one of thousands of criminals that they won't lay charges against because it's done through the courts. It's done in secret, on title. The laws make secret filing legal, so therefore you have to go to civil court. So after 17 years, we lost everything. It made me homeless trying to get rights. Now this is a story of a World War II veteran. A Canadian veteran of 3 wars at 92 discovered his nephew had title to his home. I took him to my lawyer to find out how and why. He had signed what he thought was a will leaving his home to his nephew after his death. But what the nephew had done was had him sign a transfer of title and then had the transfer filed in secret. So the law allows for that, you see. You can file anything in secret in this country, and you don't have the right as a registered owner to even be notified. Of course, what he did was fraud, but it's a fight that no police would lay a charge. He had to go to court, and it would have cost him over $100,000. So he had to give it up. He was too sick and too old to fight it. So I contacted a man by the name of Vic in the Veterans Association who helped move him into a nursing home, and he had to just walk away from his home, and he lost everything. And Ontario millionaires' heirs lost their inheritance from their father and never understood why. Well, it was because Ontario law allows for an executor to take title to all the properties. The executor sold the properties and left for parts unknown and absconded with the money. And they never know, and they don't know to this day, because when I found the person who asked me how could anything like that happen, he said, well, he didn't want to open up a can of worms. And they wouldn't have wanted to go public anyway. They didn't want to face the embarrassment. They're wealthy, prominent people, and they didn't want to discuss it. Now, here's a sample of a home that a man had in Hamilton. And in his 30s, he got a contract out of town. Luckily, long before the market boom, he gave his house key to a lady friend to check on it while away. When he returned 4 years later, discovered she had registered her name on title to his home in secret. His lawyer advised him that the court costs and years of fighting her would exceed the value, so he was forced to pay her half the current market value to get her name off title and regain his home. Fortunately, he'd made enough money that he was able to do that. But most victims don't. These 3 children belong to a couple that I met, a gentle, elderly Sudbury widower for many years. Lonely, developed a friendship with a woman for someone to have dinner with and go movies with, just a companion, not a lover, but just simply a friend. And she did not live with him. In his will, he left his home to his son, who was a construction laborer, married with 3 young children, renting, unable to afford a home. When the gentleman died, his son's lawyer discovered the woman was on title, filed in secret with no permission or notice to his father. Because, see, that's legal. It's legal to do that. Now, the lawyer demanded $50,000 cash up front and said it was not worth his time to fight her in court. The son was just a poor, uneducated worker, and he said to me, not having that kind of money, he was just forced to abandon it, and he continues to live in a rental unit. Well, frankly, that lawyer was a mercenary SOB jerk. He could have at least filed for his father's half title, filed for a partition to sell. See, that's something else that no lawyer told me about. 3 lawyers and $100,000 later, I didn't even know that I had the right in 2008 to force the sale of our properties when the market was high and get rid of my brother. But no lawyer told me that. So the wording is called partition to sell. Mark it down, people, because no lawyer will tell you about it. And it would have got him half the value of the house, so he would have gotten something. But what that woman did was fraud. And if secret filing had been banned, and if we had the same laws as in Saskatchewan, the father would have had to have been notified by her lawyer before she even put her name on title, and he could have fought it and said, that woman does not live with me, she is not a common law wife, and he could have proved it because she had her own address at the time. Okay? That's what would have happened, except that isn't what happened. Now, a middle-aged single mother who worked 2 jobs to raise her children purchased a home and paid the mortgage off after 30 years. With her children all on their own working, she began to date a charming man. He put his name in secret on title to her home, put on it a mortgage above its market value with 3 separate financial lenders, all in secret. Then he quickly disappeared. She lost her home and is now living in a subsidized housing. At 75, she's cleaning houses to survive. Another woman in her 60s, a widower, lost her home to her son. He also in secret got his name on title to her home, ran up debts, and she was forced to sell to pay off the debts. She too wound up in a senior subsidized residency. So you see, even if you're not a victim, you're a victim, because that affects your taxpayer. That affects your taxes. Somebody's got to pay for these people and these billions of dollars being lost every year. Yeah, well, you're paying for it, people. You may not think you are, but you are. So many people are victims of secret filing, but they have no voice. Their plight is trapped in a corrupt court system designed for the criminal. Makes them victims of fraud, mortgage fraud, title theft, embezzlement of estate funds, and all made legal by secret filing. And these court cases are never made public because our media just ignores it completely. I researched back over 100 years, and I found most of the cases that even made it to court, and there really weren't many, more than a handful because of the costs involved, and they lost in lower court. One made it to Supreme Court after 3 years and $60,000, and she got her property back, but she didn't get back her $60,000, or was it? No, I think it was closer to $100,000. But anyway, 3 years in court, you're looking at a good $100,000, and the criminal is long gone. So you can't get blood from a stone. In 2005, over 100 homes in and around the Toronto area, homeowners discovered that a criminal had put mortgages on their homes without their knowledge in secret. Did the Ontario government even consider banning secret filing to stop and prevent such crimes? No, not on your life. Instead, they decided the mortgages to the banks were legal and the insurance companies had to pay off the mortgages. Isn't that just sweet? Yes. Isn't that just really, really sweet? I mean, think about it, folks. Unbelievable. But that's Canada. Now, I've sent all this to Doug Ford and his team, and so far I've had nothing back. I'm not going to say anything more on that. I hope, as a businessman, that at some point he will consider what financial ruin this is costing to taxpayers and to homeowners and property owners in Canada, and that at least in Ontario he will consider doing something, but at the moment nothing is being done. Now, I've sent it to all the other parties as well, and they weren't the Conservative, the NDP, the Green Party, you name it, I've sent it to everybody. And so far not one person is even the least bit concerned. Now, the insurance companies get their money back by increasing their fees. So you see, you don't think you're being affected, but you are. Homeowners did eventually in that 2005 cases regain title to their homes, but the criminals were never charged or found. They're no doubt living the high life in Bahamas or Mediterranean with the millions that they ripped off. These are the properties that my mother and I lost due to secret filing in Canada. And that's on my website. Now, this is my grandmother and my mother and myself, 3 generations. And we're all victims of real estate fraud, property theft, all made rampant because of secret filing. I don't know what it's going to take. I really don't know what it's going to take, but I have done everything humanly possible by one person all by myself with no help from anybody except a retired policeman who did what he could, but his hands were tied, of course, because there's nothing he can do. So cruel sociopathic spouses like my father, just for the sheer pleasure, severed joint tenancy in secret, knowing we would have no spousal protection or right to be notified. And he does it knowing that after he dies, that his spouse, my mom, will not have title to the matrimonial home. And he knew that my brother as executor would steal everything he could, forcing me and my mother years in court after he dies. And he does it for the sadistic pleasure. Oh yes, he did phone me shortly before his death to tell me I'd spend the rest of my life in court. And he was laughing. I mean, that's just how rotten and cruel and a bastard my father was. But I didn't understand what he was saying. And the estate was worth in the excess of $1 million. And like I say, I was forced to sell my home in Wasaga Beach in joint tenancy and sacrifice my beautiful Wasaga Beach lifestyle to rescue her from abject poverty. Her life savings had disappeared. The $80,000 in Dad's bank account disappeared. I took care of her 17 years trying to figure out what happened to her property rights. And then suddenly the City of Sudbury, Ontario Tax Office issued a sale for public auction on our home and properties. My brother, the executor, had pocketed the rental income and not paid the taxes for several years, also in secret. He gave a job to his son at a nice salary and free rent. He refused to cooperate in selling the property, so when we came to sell, it was in duress, well below market value, and that's how we lost our home. Then I paid a lawyer, Trent Faldine, to fight the law, only to discover he had no intentions of completing the affidavit. He just lied to me. He didn't give a damn. He was just bleeding and sucking me dry. Yes. But you see, when you're sick and you're 77 with Parkinsonism disease and your mother's dying, yeah, well, you're a vulnerable victim. And predators like that just hone in for the kill. Doug McIsaac took me for 300,000 actually. Because I was too sick, I couldn't read or write, I couldn't do anything. So you see, it just snowballs. It just snowballs. It Predators know when you're a victim and you're dysfunctional and you can't protect yourself, and the police won't help to protect you and the laws don't protect you. Well, that's Canada. And then I find out from my new lawyer that I didn't even have the right to file an affidavit against a law, despite it being a criminal law that promotes real estate fraud and property theft. Only a provincial or federal member of parliament has the right to file a private member's bill to get the secret filing banned and bring in new laws to protect us. And they don't even care. So secret filing is robbing the most vulnerable of their homes, young and old alike. Suddenly you discover a stranger, a friend, a loved one has stolen all you own, facing a futile, corrupt court battle, depletes your life savings with no chance of ever recovering your losses, and doomed to become homeless as I did. Is that the kind of democracy you want for your children? Well, I guess so, because I can't get anybody to care. Now, the above stories are all true. Now, some of the photos on my site are Google samples only, because the real people didn't want to be involved. But there's all kinds of people. If only the Marketplace or the Passionate Eye or CBC or somebody would do a documentary, they could easily expose this. And I wouldn't have lost my home. And I wouldn't have lost 18 years of my life. And maybe my mother would still be alive. But these stories are just the tip of the iceberg. There are hundreds of thousands every year and billions of dollars every year in Canada that you'll never hear about. I've tried urging all victims of real estate property theft to go and put their stories on my website for free, but nobody wants to do that, and I'm not powerful enough, rich enough, or famous enough to get the kind of media exposure that it would take to force the government to ban these laws. So I'm putting this out for historical purposes in the hopes that someday somebody somewhere will publish the truth. And if by then my websites are gone and I've died, well, at least you'll have this on Google, because Google is forever. Thank you, Google. So getting back to Saskatchewan law, it's the Homestead Act of 1989. It does not allow for secret severance of joint tenancy. Secret filing is banned, number 1. No severance of joint tenancy on the matrimonial home without spousal consent. And a separation or divorce is settled in court just as you would in any normal separation or divorce. Notification in writing on all real estate properties is mandatory law before any changes are made on title. Therefore, it is impossible to steal in secret anyone's matrimonial home or income property rights or commit fraud on an estate in secret. No executor has the right to take ownership title in secret. No executor has the right to control the properties and sell them in secret. So consequently, if an executor ever did do an event occur like that, it's automatically criminal, and the police must lay a charge, and the victim is not required to hire a lawyer and spend decades in civil courts and lose their life savings fighting a lost cause in a court system that's so corrupt they can't win even if they lose. Even if they win, they lose. Now, I have published many stories on YouTube as well as my biography, and it's all there. It is all the truth of what happened to me. The law on my true story, of my life story, the language is raw, and therefore it is not for the faint of heart or children. It's restricted. I did it for historical purposes and the future generations to come who will be born like me. I don't expect to live to see justice in my lifetime. And at the moment, I can no longer continue to fight because I'm just too ill. I can no longer control. I have a tumor that's causing nerve damage, and I'm taking paralyzing attacks on a daily basis. I'm only functionally well two days out of the month. And Dan McIsaac takes care of me. He took me off the streets and So because of him, I'm technically not homeless, but I am homeless because I lost my home. So I hope that I've given you all that you need to know. And God willing, someday, somewhere, somebody will care. I can't bear the thought that women, young mothers, are all going to wind up the victims that I am. It's just sick what's going on in our society. It's just sick. So anyway, sorry that this is so long, but who knows? The life you save may be your own. I don't know. I saw a group of young women at the beach, and in their name, I don't know who they are, but there's all their little babies. Someday, any one of these women will be a victim, like my mother, or a senior in their 90s, like my mother, or any one of their children. As long as our laws continue to be so corrupt, there's absolutely nothing more that I can do. I've done all I can. So you get the government you deserve, people. The rest is up to you. God bless. And please share, because the life you save may be somebody you love. I don't know how many times I'm going to do this, but are you aware that as a spouse you have absolutely no protection on the matrimonial home, not even in the Family Law Act in Ontario or anywhere, most of Canada? Property theft, mortgage fraud, estate embezzlement, it's all made legal by secret filing. A spouse can lose their home and you'd have to go to court to fight to get it. And that's what's called democracy in Ontario and Canada. And it's all done in secret. I don't understand why lawyers don't seem to care. I don't understand why I can't get members of parliament to care. I don't understand why your premiers in the provinces that allow for secret filing and Justin Trudeau, our prime minister, thinks it's okay. I just don't understand. And I don't understand why media, such as the Globe and Mail and the National Post, isn't the least bit concerned that as a registered owner in Ontario and most of Canada, you have no legal rights whatsoever to be even notified if a crook has stolen your property, has committed mortgage fraud, has embezzled your estate funds. You don't even have the right to be notified. That's Canadian law. Can you imagine after 61 years of marriage, age 95, 18 years after your spouse's death, you suddenly discover